Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Romie and this is Romie with Romie, where I talk about travel with a cultural and historical focus. Here on my channel, I'll share things like travel vlogs, travel tips, a little bit of like history and cultural lessons here and there. So if you're new here, please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. Please make sure to hit the notification bell as well and share this across your networks. As you've probably seen in the title, this video is all about the biggest party on earth, and that is Rio de Janeiro's Carnival, and how to do it on a budget specifically. So as you know, I am a budget traveler and I try to share the different tips and tricks I know to help folks travel more often and not spend a ton of money while doing it. I actually just came back from Rio's Carnival about a week and a half ago, so I'm trying to record this video while all of the experiences and information is just fresh in my memory. Carnival on a budget. I want to preface this video by saying that any type of large event, any type of special occasion, even holidays factor into this. There's peak tourism times for different destinations around the world, and for Brazil, specifically the city of Rio de Janeiro, Carnival is its peak time for tourism. Naturally and expectedly, prices are going to be a little higher for everything. It's not impossible for budget travelers to have the Carnival experience, but it still will be more of an expensive trip compared to visiting Rio during other times of the year, especially during their low or shoulder seasons. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, that's the perfect segue into what's arguably going to be your biggest expense, and those are your flights. Now, depending where in the world you'll be flying from, naturally the flight prices will range. I flew from the United States. I flew from my home city of Atlanta, and I flew American Airlines round trip. And that flight cost me $1,200 US approximately. It did have a layover in each direction in Miami, which is one of the airline's bases. So depending on what city you're flying from, for instance, if you're flying from Miami or maybe New York City or some other really large hubs where there's a lot of competition with international flight carriers, you may be able to find better deals. Of course, flights that have very inconvenient times or more than one layover will typically be cheaper. Your direct flights will be more expensive. So to try to combat the expectedly higher flight prices for Carnival, I recommend trying to look as far in advance as possible. Of course, we can't always understand the algorithms that airlines have when it comes to flight pricing, but typically the earlier you buy, you might be able to find some better deals. Another thing I recommend is utilizing your credit card points for these type of purchases. I recommend using your points and transferring them to airline partners. I'll probably make a totally separate video on the ins and out of that, but to summarize, you can go to different airlines that partner with your specific credit card, make those free accounts, and then be able to transfer the points you accrued on your credit card directly to those airlines. You can be able to distribute those miles towards your flight. So it most likely may not pay for the entire flight, or it might, depending on how many miles you've accrued, but it still may offset the cost of the flight and bring it down to a price that's a little bit more affordable. After you found your flight, now you have to find your accommodation. Again, rates are going to spike because of Carnival, but it is not impossible. So I recommend looking at hostels, Airbnbs, especially those where you have a private room in a shared space, and just really low-end budget hotels. In terms of certain neighborhoods, from my experience, what I found to be a little bit more budget-friendly includes neighborhoods like Lapa, which is kind of known for its nightlife, but they have really good accommodation options there. Botofago, I'm sorry to all my Brazilians and Portuguese people if I'm mispronouncing that. Neighborhoods like St. Theresa, which is next to Lapa, kind of the central areas of the city of Rio tend to be a little bit more budget traveler friendly. Now, of course, the main kind of tourism spots are the Copacabana neighborhood, the Ipanema neighborhood. Those will run you higher, but again, even in those neighborhoods, there's an entire range of different hotel and Airbnb options. And just like with your flights, I recommend booking as soon as possible so that you have more options. So what exactly is Carnival? So for those that don't know, Carnival is basically a week-long celebration that takes place around different parts of Brazil and in different parts of the world. I won't get too much into the history of Carnival and what it means in the global context, but for Rio specifically, it's a week where there are a lot of street parties, events, and just people all over the world descending upon Rio to have a really good time. So besides the atmosphere of revelry and debauchery, the Carnival in Rio is mostly known for the street parties, which are called blocos, and for the carnival parades in their Sambadromes, and those are done by the Samba schools. The history of Carnival in Brazil lies in Afro-Brazilian history, and you see that a lot in the carnival parades at the Sambadrome. So what I recommend, especially as a budget traveler, definitely have the experience of attending a bloco. For anyone who's familiar with New Orleans Mardi Gras, it's kind of like that. You have people with drums, different horns and instruments, and they just kind of go down the street playing music, and people just start to gather in the street and party and dance and laugh, and it's just a joyous occasion. So there are IG pages, I will link one below, that I use to kind of keep track of when the different blocos start, where they'll be. The blocos start as early as 6 a.m. and continue pretty much all day. It's basically a 24-hour type of situation. So depending on the type of schedule you're on and what you want to do, you can choose to attend whatever blocko works best for you. They also have themes. Some of them do. So it's also worth checking in advance because they may ask you to wear certain colors or a certain type of costume. So those are usually really fun. Now moving on to the official Samba School parades. If you are able, I highly recommend that you get a ticket to the Sambadrome and watch the parades. It's not the most budget traveler friendly thing to do for Rio Carnival, but we were able to get tickets for around $40 US, and I think it's definitely worth it. Especially considering that the price point for other things in Rio, such as food and transportation and a lot of the activities, are either low cost or free. So in terms of the tickets, there are many different outlets and vendors that sell tickets. Please exercise caution because it's known that there are some vendors selling fake tickets and trying to scam people. So I'll try to include some resources in the description of different vendors and outlets where you can get an official ticket. So we sat in section 7. There are a ton of assigned sections, and unlike a typical concert ticket, you don't get a specific seat assignment. You get an assignment for your section. So we were in section 7, which is right in the middle. It's known as one of the more popular and desirable sections, but there are sections that might be a little cheaper depending on where in the Sambadrome you're sitting. And the Sambadrome is basically kind of like a track stand, except it's not a circular track, or rather an elliptical track. It's just kind of a straight pathway, paved street, road. Sorry, I'm blanking on how to best articulate it, but it's just where the parades and floats and dancers of the different Samba schools will go down and perform. And it is a competition, so they do get judged, and you're in the stands as spectators. Another thing about logistics, transportation. So in my first trip to Rio, which I took in 2019 during an off season, and then just now when I went for Carnival, I highly recommend Ubers. Ubers are really affordable in Rio, especially if you're used to Uber prices in the US, UK, Canada, and it's just a really affordable way to get around. If you're looking to save even more money, then you can try out Rio's public transit system. They have underground metros, above ground trolleys, different buses, and that's really what the locals use to get around. So it will be a cool experience to travel around like a local and save even more money if you choose to use public transportation. I recommend against not using taxis. In my personal experience just now, I have realized retrospectively of different taxi drivers trying to take advantage of us, of taking different routes that are longer, of not starting the meter at 0 or letting the meter continue even when it should have stopped. And the Rio taxi drivers are notorious for trying to take advantage of visitors. So if you can avoid taxis, I would. Sometimes it's inevitable to take one, but if you have other options, I recommend against taking a taxi. So what else to do during your time for Rio Carnival. So if you have any energy left over from partying all day and night, which I hope you would, there are so many amazing things to do and experience in Rio. One of my favorite experiences on the trip I just came from was a favela tour. For those that don't know, favelas are concentrations of low-income neighborhoods that have had a very dynamic and robust history. Again, I won't get too much into that in this video, but we were able to do a favela tour of the Rocinha favela through an ethical company that is owned and operated by people from that favela, and they continue to reinvest the proceeds into the favela. So I will include the name of that company below in the description. Of course, I also recommend the other kind of typical things to do in Rio. Even though they're touristy, they're popular for a reason. So visiting Christ the Redeemer, the Escadrilla Celerón, so the tile steps, walking around Copacabana and Ipanema Beach and getting in the waves, drinking your caipirinhas and other drinks on the beach. Even taking the cable cars up to Sugarloaf Mountain, which is kind of pricey, so those tickets do run about $30 US, but the views are absolutely incredible. Of course, you should be partying around Lapa, though you may already be planning to do so. So yeah, there's different museums that are either free or really affordable. Actually, Rio has a ton of really good museums, both for art, history, natural science. So I will list a few things in the description box of some of my favorite things to do in Rio. So be sure to check that out. All right, y'all, there you have it. How to do Rio Carnival on a budget, speaking from my personal experience. If you like this video, please like. Again, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It really helps me out with the algorithm on YouTube. I also would love to invite you to follow me on Instagram at Roaming with Romie. I'll be sure to include that link below. And please reach out to me either here on YouTube or on Instagram if you have any questions, need a thought partner while you're planning your own trip to Rio for Carnival, or just to kind of connect, right? Always looking forward to connecting with my subscribers and viewers. So thanks again. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you at the next video.